Tonight on the South Bank Show, the story of the Velvet Underground, which has been described as the most influential rock group of the 60s. They played together for only 4 years, 1966 to 1970, and made only 4 albums during that time. They never played outside America. But the Velvet Underground introduced a rough edge of street realism and doubt into pop music at a time when most bands were still caught up in West Coast flower power, especially poppy power. Without them, it's probably fair to say that punk wouldn't have happened. Their influence is acknowledged by people as diverse as David Bowie, Talking Heads, and the Young Jesus and Mary chain. 17 years after they broke up, their songs are still widely recorded, and this week Polydor are re-releasing all their albums. The Velvet Underground were Lou Reed, a rock and roller from Long Island, avant-garde musician John Cale, guitarist Sterling Morrison, and a young, untrained drummer, Maureen Tucker. For a time, they were joined by the beautiful singer, Nico. Together, they created the first alliance between pop music and the avant-garde. Perhaps it could only have happened in the 60s, when the emergence of pop art and underground cinema caused an explosion in the established art world. Maybe a big pop rather than a big bang, but impact it had. To reflect the mood of the time, we've illustrated the story of the Velvets with rare underground film from that period. The Velvet Underground were promoted by pop artist Andy Warhol in the mid-60s. Warhol was at the height of his celebrity then. To his New York studio, the factory, came art dealers, limousine liberals, and downtown bohemians. Warhol's films of these people became as famous as his paintings, and he began to look for a new three-dimensional art form. The Svengali of fashion struck again. Pop art met art pop.
We're sponsoring a new band. It's called the Velvet Underground, and we're trying to. Since I don't really believe in painting anymore, I thought it would be a nice way of combining, and we have this chance to combine music and art and films all together, and we're sort of working on that, well, the whole thing is being auditioned tomorrow at 9 o'clock. And if it works out, it might be very glamorous.
In my hand, up to Lexington, 125. Feel sick and dirty, more dead than alive. I'm waiting for my man. Hey, white boy, what you doing uptown? White boy, you chasing all women around. Oh, pardon me, sir, it's furthest from my mind. I'm just looking forward to different of mine. I'm waiting for my man.
It began to become clear that the Warhol Enterprises were going to be something on the order of a Hollywood studio. And the Hollywood studios need not only a lot of stars around jockeying for position, but a big lot on which to perform. And it was perfectly natural, if the art was being made there and the films were being made there, for the music to come the same way.
Everything that he touched, he had such facility of making it a big success somehow. Turned everything into gold.
Who did that picture? So much gold. Oh, you know, that pop artist. What's his name? He makes avant-garde films, too. Oh, you mean him? I saw some of those films. Nothing happens in them. Well, people are just supposed to be themselves or something like that. Oh, there's one of his actors. Oh, he was in the thing I saw. The only good thing is, I think he should go to Hollywood. Are you kidding? He looks too far out.
I mean, in a really big way, the crossover happened with the Velvet Underground and Andy and the art world. So the band actually became more like an art band because of its association with Andy and because of Andy's association with the art world, as opposed to just another rock and roll band. Well, I was working at the factory with Andy. It was just about the time that the Velvets became associated with us. And I really got into the music, and I started dancing in front of the group.
I be your mirror, reflect what you are, in case you don't know. I be the wind, the rain and the sunset, the light on your door, to show that you're home. When you think the night has in your mind, that inside you're twisted and unkind. Let me stand to show that you are blind. Please put down your hands, 'cause I see you.
The Velvet Underground were a completely unknown group until they met Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol, within the space of 3 months after meeting them, had them playing nightly at the Dome on St. Mark's Place to an extraordinary audience, a mixture of uptown socialites, downtown trash, junkies, factory people, society people, fashion editors, and everything. It was a new accumulation of people that hadn't been seen before. And they became famous.
It's my wife, and it's my life, because a manna to my vein leads to a center in my head, and then I'm better off than dead. Because when the smack begins to flow, I really don't care anymore about all the Jim-Jims in this town and all the politicians making crazy sounds and everybody putting everybody else down and all the dead bodies piled up in mounds.
Velvet's music, as a legacy, they were really precursors to a lot of what's happening today. They were really the pathfinders. They were the ones that were going to take the ridicule, even. Where what's happening now is a lot of that music is more or less accepted.
It was an attempt to be revolutionary, and an attempt to combine both the avant-garde and the commercial, and try and make a run at it. We rehearsed at one point for a year and a half, every day for a year and a half, and recorded every rehearsal. And I ended up filing down the bridge of my viola and calling it a three-string drone, and put guitar strings on it, and used the bass bow on it, and it would make a noise very similar to a B-52. And together, the thing, when we really started performing it with some power, I mean, it would definitely have a daunting effect on the audience. I was interested in developing rock and roll in a sense that you would incorporate this, both the funky side of rock and roll and the Wagnerian side of rock and roll, and put it together.
But Lou was living upstairs and heard us playing all these blues records and whatnot. At the wee hours of the morning, he had the campus radio show that was on once a week on Saturdays. So he came down to borrow records. And I could hear all this humming and buzzing upstairs. And that was Lou warming up. And then he was just playing as loud as he could with his amplifier hanging out the window. I said, oh, he plays guitar too. I have to talk to this guy. And so I did.
Come on, let's go. All right, everybody get down on your face, man. Get ready, yeah. Okay, come on. Hey, put your hands up on your knees now to the altar. Yeah. Take this forward, step on your head now to the altar. All right.
They're all real simple ideas. 3 chords, turn it up, and make the lyrics be about something. Had to be about something that had to do with everyday reality as we knew it then, as opposed to just nothing or making believe it was about something. I mean, I think a real characteristic of the Velvet Underground, as I think is about my own songs, is that they're really about something. I mean, that we really care about, that really happen, that have some bearing in real life, and they're not just a disposable subject. I mean, I was trying to give you a shot of some of the street.
Standing on the corner, suitcase in my hand, Jack's in his corset, Jane is in her vest, and me, I'm in a rock and roll band. Huh. Riding a Studs Bearcat Jim. You know, those were different times. All the poets, they studied rules of verse, and those ladies, they rolled their eyes. CJ, oh, CJ, oh, CJ. I tell you something, Jack, he is a banker, and Jane, she is a clerk.
There was the songwriter, Lou. He was rapidly trying to show me all these other songs, but he was playing them on an acoustic guitar, and I said I was really fed up with folk music. The Dylan stuff and Joan Baez stuff, I was quite disinterested in people writing songs that had nothing but questions in them. That it was far better to make a statement than, you know, how many miles, Mr. Man? And but when I read the lyrics, they certainly were not. I mean, the lyrics to Heroin were certainly not self-pitying.
Away from the big city, where a man cannot be free of all of the evils of this town, and of himself and looks around. Oh, and I guess that I just don't know. Oh, and I guess that I just don't know.
They're good songs. I mean, they're going to stand up no matter who plays them, but they're nothing like how we wound up playing. Me with my no drum training whatsoever, just bashing away, made a huge difference. Sterling with his nice, quiet little ideas of guitar playing and his real solid rhythm playing, and John with his manic viola. Lou would go off on a tangent, and Cale would go off on a tangent, and if someone wasn't holding it all down, it would just be this massive confusion. So I would concentrate on just playing the same beat we started at, and just keep it under there, so when everybody came back, there was something to go back to.
In 1965, the pop music scene, wherever it was going to go without us. That was our conclusion. John had no pop involvement whatsoever, and Lou and I had given up. It was impossible. The bands all had matching suits and little choreographed routines, and it was Joey D, you know, that kind of thing. Jay and the Americans, I guess they were around. It was very cosmetic.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'd like to welcome you here to the Dance Pavilion up at Lake Arrowhead. To really kick off this swinging summer, from Reprise Records, we bring to you Mr. Personality himself, Donnie Brooks.
Hi, gang. I want to tell you about a woman. I want to tell you about a woman that's crazy. I call her Penny the Pooh. She knows exactly what to do. She's a real cool dolly. She's a hot tub molly.
So we said, well, we don't have matching suits, and it's unlikely that we can work out any of these dance routines. So I guess we've had it, and that was it. So Lou John and I, having concluded that we'd had it, were then free to pursue anything we wanted.
Your step. She's gone to break your heart in two. It's true. It's not hard to realize. Just look into her false-colored eyes. She'll build you up to just put you down. What a clown, 'cause everybody knows the things she does to please. She's just a little tease. See the way she walks, hear the way she talks. Well, I'd been living in New York since 1959, modeling, doing, modeling for Fords. Until I took up acting lessons with Lee Strasberg, and Marilyn Monroe was in my class. Very exciting. And he said I should join him in New York. And it was Bob Dylan that introduced me. And he also told Andy that he should make movies with me. I guess he wanted to look at me through a magnifying glass. And, just wherever he went, he had just... To me, it seemed that way, when you always have a camera with you at all times.
His sense of surveillance was very acute.
Accurate?
Acute and accurate. Well, yeah. Acute. He was a spy. He spied on everybody.
Un voyeur.
I mean, he just put disparate elements together, which is what I've always appreciated him for, because I thought that's the approach that I had towards the music, was that there was Nika, there was Lou, there was Sterling, there were more, and you put 4 or 5 different elements together, and you get a 6th.
You had a very eclectic gathering of people from time to time at the factory. You had Andy's gallery dealer, Leo Castelli, would come by with maybe 1 or 2 people. You had collectors that Andy knew. They came by on occasion. And always when somebody like that would come by, there would always be another group of people there also, maybe a couple of amphetamine heads or, people that didn't have a place to stay, or artists, other artists, or poets even. Maybe a fashion model or two on occasion.
And what costume shall the poor girl wear to all tomorrow's parties? A hand-me-down dress from who knows where to all tomorrow's parties. And where will she go? What shall she do when midnight comes around? She turned once more to Sunday's clown and cry behind the door.
All Tomorrow's Parties, which is on the first record, which is Andy's favorite song, which is all about, well, it's all about this girl who's concerned because she doesn't know what sort of dress she should wear to go to the party tomorrow, and she hasn't got enough money to go and buy a new one, so she's got to borrow someone else's dress, and so on. These are all like little specifically short stories about individual peoples, which group together create kind of a group portrait of a sensibility and of a lifestyle, in the same way that the film Chelsea Girls does exactly the same thing. I mean, Chelsea Girls basically is 12 different vignettes.
What? Come down here to make... to make a movie? Come down here to... I hate movies. The Underground is not my scene. Excuse me, I have a trick here, dear, that causes me a little bit of problem. Now, I'm here. Shut up! All right! Oh, Jesus Christ. You're right.
Life in the 60s was just totally different. Everybody was taking speed. Everybody was drinking a lot. You know, nobody went to sleep at night. We used to stay up for 8 and 9 days without going to bed. I recorded for about 8 years every moment of my life. I would come home and, you know, 3 o'clock in the morning from Max's Kansas City, and I would sit there and listen to my whole day of tapes, writing 0 to 5, conversation with Andy about so-and-so. I would type this all up to put it in the cassette and then type it in books, and the really good, juicy tapes, I would transcribe the whole thing, just for my own personal use. And then Lou used to call me up. There was a period when Lou used to call me up all the time and sing to me over the telephone his new songs.
I don't know just where I'm going, but I'm gonna try for the kingdom if I can, 'cause it makes me feel like I'm a man when I put a spike into my vein. Things aren't quite the same when I'm rushing on my run, and I feel just like Jesus' son. And I guess that I just don't know, and I guess that I just don't know.
I think it was like very unusual to have someone with a viola or a violin in the group, and a girl drummer, and also the songs were very, very radically different from your normal rock and roll love song. They dealt more with darkness, and there wasn't anything optimistic about the songs, in a sense.
this and cure his heart.
I think the effect of Venus in Furs is that musically it's so shocking. I think that's what frightened people. That could have been a song about anything. But that always has been my favorite song. That's the, if I had to say, show me one thing that you do differently than anybody else ever did, I would drag out Venus in Furs. I say, you show me whoever sounded like this.
Severin, Severin, speak so slightly. Severin, down on your bended knee. Taste the whip, in love not given lightly. Taste the whip, now plead for me. Dreams that would awake me.
I think that was the mood of anything is possible, but let's find something beautiful. To me, the miraculous thing about the Velvet Underground was always not its strangeness, not their difference from what the current modes were, but in their own terms, a very beautiful sense of sound, of rhythm, and of melody.
Sometimes I feel so happy. Sometimes I feel so sad. Sometimes I feel so happy. But mostly you just make me mad. Baby, you just make me mad. Linger on, your pale blue eyes. Linger on, your pale blue eyes. Thought of you as my mountaintop. Thought of you as my peak. Thought of you as everything I've had but couldn't keep. I've had but couldn't keep. Linger on, your pale blue eyes. Linger on.
Haven't you ever been to Levin?
No.
Ah. I think it's gonna be like Easter and Christmas and New Year's and your birthday all together, you know.
If you're going to San Francisco, be sure to wear some flowers in your hair. If you're going to San Francisco, you're gonna meet some gentle people there.
one day it was announced that we had enough money to go into the studio, and we were going. I said, oh, okay. We just move our equipment in and start blasting. And then when we had an album's worth of stuff, that means stop.
You killed your European son. You spit on those under 21. But now your blue cards are gone. You better sit so long. Hey, hey, bye, bye, bye.
I think we all had that idea to have a nice, vaguely amateurish sound to this. I guess one of the things that affected the sound of the songs was that all the amps would be on at the same time, of course. And in those days, they weren't so great with baffling and hiding things. So there'd be feedback or hissing and stuff that you really don't hear. But if that stuff was taken out, it would make a tremendous difference.
You really had to let it sink in, especially if you weren't especially taken with the sensationalistic negativism of songs like Heroin, which I wasn't. It sold, what did it do? It go to 99 in the Billboard charts? As it turned out, it was prophetic, but there was no way to know that at the time. The most significant thing about that music was Maureen Tucker's beat. And Lou Reed's vocal manner, quite remarkably deadpan, and underneath it all, witty, lively, full of its own kind of energy, too. He really understood at some level what that beat was all about and meshed with it perfectly.
By the time the record came out, the initial energy which had gone into making it had kind of dispersed. The enormous Warhol production shows, the light show, the famous light shows at the Dome and at the Trip in LA, no longer existed. It was all over. So this record was almost like a historical artifact by the time it came out. And Nico was no longer with the group. It was all. Then they got it together with a new manager, and with whom they had a pretty good relationship. And here you finally had the original Velvet Underground, Lou Reed, John Cale, Sterling Morrison, and Maureen Tucker. And they went into a recording studio in New York and recorded White Light, White Heat in the summer of 1967.
Oh, white heat, they pull me down to my toe. Oh, white light, I tell you now, goodness knows you're working. White light, oh, she surely do me.
For my money, I think it's the quintessential Velvet Underground record because it's the four of them, because it was produced. They totally controlled it. Sister Ray is probably the best example of that. Sister Ray, which is a 17-minute long song, which of course is very, very unusual, particularly for those days, was done in only one take. And the reason for that was that they just, they were so fed up with each other, and they knew it was a long song, and they knew they didn't have it in them to do it more than once, together in the same room. So they basically said, okay, this is it. Everyone do whatever the hell they want. We're going to record Sister Ray. And if you listen to the track on a reasonably good set of headphones or something, it's quite fascinating because there really becomes a battle between the instruments in there. At one point, Cale turns his volume up on his organ extra high and starts bursting through this organ piece. And you can't hear the drums at all. Probably at its peak at that period, and then there continued to be a certain amount of this tension between Cale and Reed. But as Sterling points out in my book, and as Maureen also said, it created, the music. So then that went on for a while, and then there was the famous instance in which Reed called a band meeting at the Riviera Cafe around the corner from here on Sheridan Square, and Morrison and Tucker arrived, and John Cale wasn't there. And Lou Reed said, John's out of the band, and there was an enormous fight, and everyone started throwing things, and, you know. But basically, to jump to the third album was then made without John Cale. And now this is where you get into kind of all sorts of theories as to whether the Velvet Underground then became Lou Reed's backing band or not. I mean, Reed definitely has to be classed on the same level as, well, I mean, Bob Dylan, John Lennon, Chuck Berry, what have you. I mean, you know, some of these songs are immortal songs, and they define a whole time period. So I think that as a lyricist, as a poet, he's called the Poet Laureate of New York City.
Well, the Lou Reed New York attitude is real. It was just the New York attitude. I mean, you know, you could find lots of people with it. Yeah, I mean, I can't really take credit for copying on a New York attitude, but it was like, there was no moral stance. I think that was another thing I try to be really careful with. There's no moral stance to these songs. It was just this happened and that happened, and it presented kind of dry, unemotional.
Got $26 in my hand. Up to Lexington, 125. Feeling sick and dirty, more dead than alive. Ooh, sweet mama, I'm waiting for my man. Hey, white boy, what you doing uptown? Hey, white boy, you chasing all women around? Oh, pardon me, sir, it's furthest from my mind. I'm just waiting for a dear friend of mine. I'm waiting for my man.
In an era when the whole notion of rock poetry was a very important one, when, as usual, Dylan was the real exemplar, no one ever thought about Lou Reed as a rock poet. And in retrospect, it seems to me that he had one of the most authentic and original voices of anyone writing lyrics in the 60s, perhaps the most authentic and original voice. And the reason nobody noticed is that there was nothing even remotely poetic in the appearance of his lyrics. They were very demotic, very conversational, very, to use a word I go back to again and again, deadpan. Now, in fact, he was capable of real flights of lyricism.
I wish that I was born 1,000 years ago. And I wish that I'd sail the darkened seas on a great big clipper ship, going from this land here to that, put on a sailor's suit and cap. Away from the big cities, where a man cannot be free of all of the evil in this town, and of him
myself and those around. Oh, and I guess I just don't know. Oh, and I guess that I just don't know.
Lou was acting very oddly. He told me he was leaving the group, and he was really upset, and we sat there for a while. I didn't put any questions to him or argue with him. He had obviously made his decision. He didn't give me any specific reasons why he had decided to leave. And that was the last night he played with them, as I recall, and maybe he played 2 more nights or something.
We've all really gone our separate ways, and I have no communication with any of them except Maureen, Mo, the drummer. I'm not interested in them or high school reunions. I'm not interested in reunions at all. I like today, what's going on today. And I think it's nice what happened yesterday. I'm very proud of it all. But I wouldn't want to go back.
He's one of the best songwriters around today. His name's Lou Reed. And this is one of his early things. It's called White Light, White Heat. White light, white light, gonna drive me out of my brain. White light, white light, gonna make me feel so insane. White heat, take me down to my toes. White light, scarlet out of goodness knows. White light, gonna drive me out of my mind. White light, shooter, gonna make me blind. White heat, take me way down to my toes. White light, could kill me now, goodness knows.
The Velvet Underground is as much the source of everything that's put under the vague rubric New Wave as the Beatles were of everything that was put under the vague rubric rock in the late 60s and early 70s. That's to say that bands which don't like the Velvet Underground, don't use any of their usages, still owe them a debt because they come out of the negative energy, the critical energy that band instilled in the first generation of punk bands.
I don't have any heroes. They're all useless.
I mean, distortion was definitely one of the things that we were interested in forcing down people's throats. I mean, it was just like wearing glasses on stage and turning our backs on the audience and just turning up loud and as far as wearing glasses on stage is concerned, you know, the only reason we wore them was because we couldn't stand the sight of the audience.
I find it's almost an extension, like the 1980s are an extension of the 1960s. I have to admit that. It's as if the 70s didn't exist, as if it went straight from the 60s to the 80s, somehow.
Well, I don't look back at those times at all. I'm very much in the present. You know, when I pick up a magazine or a book and I see my name in it, I always think of that person as not me, but somebody else with that name. So it's like a character in a novel because I'm really into what I'm doing now in the present anyway.
Oh. Warhol Studio. Jed? Hi, how are you? Good. Fred's he's not in yet. Wait a minute, do you want to talk to Sam? This is a big office now. It's not really a factory. It's not crazy anymore. We don't have zombies coming around like we did in the 60s. Now we have Japanese businessmen We have, you know, collectors all day long. We have very chic luncheons upstairs, you know, and it's all different, you know. It would be something that your mother would be very proud of.
I had put out a little single, and that's when I found out what was going on as far as young fans and stuff. And then when I was selling my little single over the phone, I just, in my kitchen, calling up record shops around the country, I had my little speech all set. I was going to say, my name is Maureen Tucker, and I used to be in the Velvet Underground, figuring they wouldn't know who this was. And not one of them did I get to Velvet Underground. As soon as I said Maureen Tucker, they knew who I was, and that really surprised me.
I mean, all these people talk about, you know, how they see the influence in this and that and that. You know, it's like the kiss of death, I mean, I would imagine. I mean, there's a cult following here for the Velvet Underground, and anybody would want to say, you know, to the record company, if they wanted to get signed, that they were influenced by the Velvet Underground would be, you know, would be stupid. I mean, it would be the last thing you would want a record company to feel was they were dealing with another Velvet Underground.
Images develop in and of themselves. So once people decide that the Velvet Underground is in fact a depraved group of junkies, whatever their musical talents, then people are always waiting for you to do something strange. But in fact, we had good table manners and paid our hotel bills, didn't break furniture, as people with middle-class upbringings might be expected to do. Oh, if we'd done some insane things, it probably would have helped.
We dress conservatively at the best of times, prefer the shadows to the bright lights in the eyes of the ones we love. The bright lights in the eyes of the ones you love. What we see, what we imagine, the eyes tell us nothing. The bright lights in the eyes of the ones you love will tell you nothing, like the scars of imagination. The scars of imagination. The bright lights in the eyes of the ones you love will tell you nothing, except you're the thoughtless kind. So if you grow tired of the friends you made, never, never turn your back on them. Say they were the best of times you ever had. The best of times was thoughtless kind. The best of times with the thoughtless kind.
If you're not intent on succeeding at all costs, you can't possibly sell out because there's nothing to receive in exchange. So why not do anything you want to, any way you want to? So we had a freedom that most bands deny themselves because they're trying to make it. They're trying to do something. And we were trying to do something too, but we didn't care if it never got out the 4 walls that we were in.
Somebody shut the door. I knew where temptation lies inside of your heart.
You can talk during this.
I know where the evil lies inside of your heart. Well, get out of here. If you're gonna try to make it right, you're surely gonna end up wrong.
Wrong, 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 wrong.
Oh, well, shut the door. And it's only 8:45. I know where the mirror's edge is inside of your heart. She didn't play it out tonight. I know where the razor's edge is inside of your heart. Motown. It's not even 5 feet. Well, if you're gonna make it right, you're surely gonna end up wrong.
You don't look like Martha Vandella.
Oh, she's gonna start it all over again. Somebody get her out of here. Electricity comes from other planets.
It's not that bad a solo. 4 times.
Oh!
It's pretty together.
You can't stay there. You didn't snap your hand.
I can talk to myself this way.
Lock the door this time. I know where temptation lies inside of your heart. It's true. I know where the evil lies inside of your heart. Is you ready? But if you're gonna try to make it right, you're surely gonna end up wrong. All the